Welcome to QB Power Hour. Today is February 11th, 2016 for QuickBooks at Year End, Part 4. The agenda for today is we'll talk about QB Power Hour, about the host and the guest. We'll talk about the CPE process for accountants, some announcements and updates, and then we'll dive right into the topics. Deep dive into QuickBooks Statement Writer. Very excited about first time talking about QuickBooks Statement Writer, and then we're going to talk about working with the new trial balance tool in QuickBooks Online Accountant. Michelle Long is a co-host. She's not here with us in this episode, but make sure to check out her 5 books she has on Amazon all about QuickBooks and being a QuickBooks consultant, and join her LinkedIn group. Has over 160,000 members. You can ask any questions about QuickBooks. You will probably find a few people give you different answers, which is a great place to interact with other QuickBooks Power users. My name is Hector Garcia. I'm a CPA, accountant, and a QuickBooks trainer in Miami. I work and live here. I have my own classroom. I teach QuickBooks almost for a living, and I also do some traditional accounting work. And I love creating videos and making educational content, which is why I do this QB Power Hours with Michelle Long. About QB Power Hour, we are a webinar series, normally every other week, no breaks normally, but it's every other week. During tax season, we've had a lot of topics to cover because they're very pertinent to consultants. So we've been doing them pretty much weekly in the last couple of weeks. And the next one is going to be next week, February 18th on Thursday. And the topic for next week is frequently asked questions when converting QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online and some of the advanced issues that we have during conversion. And we'll also have Intuit's support team here answering questions about issues they've had to fix regarding converting from QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online. Last week on February 4th, Michelle did an episode about sort of the basics of converting from desktop to online and some of the data integrity issues that need to be fixed in QuickBooks Desktop before upgrading. Now we're going to talk about more advanced issues after we upgrade. Um, Tips and tricks and advanced insights is pretty much what this webinar is all about. Normally it's about 50-50, 50% QuickBooks Desktop, 50% QuickBooks Online. Today we'll have 2 topics, some desktop and some online. May not be exactly 50-50, but that's generally what we do. Sometimes we have special guests like we do have today, or third-party apps or practice management topics that are a little bit beyond QuickBooks. And make sure you check out QB Power Hour. We want you to suggest what topics you'd like to see, and the most popular topics basically become an episode. The sponsors and guests, well, the sponsors are Michelle Long and I and our companies. We spend our own time and our own resources putting these things together. Every once in a while, we'll have a third-party developer or a third-party speaker, and we vet them. So it's not just anyone that wants to be in QB Power Hour. So they go through Michelle and I, and we'll choose who goes in there. We are not sponsored or associated by Intuit, although from time to time, Intuit may be involved in a specific episode, or we may bring an Intuit employee as a guest speaker to cover some announcements or some important things having to do with Intuit. CPE Process, if you watch this live through GoToWebinar and you attend them live and at least 50 minutes worth, plus you answer the correct CPE password, we're basically going to give you the password in the middle of the webinar, and then you have one opportunity to answer that correctly. If you have 50 minutes live and the password, we will email you a CPE certificate within 3 weeks. Upcoming events. So Michelle Long is running the Accounting VCon again. This is several years in the running. Check it out, accountingvcon.com, May 12th and 13th. This is an online virtual conference. Then we have a physical conference at the Bahamas in the Atlantis Resort. Scaling New Heights. Check it out. It's the biggest QuickBooks Pro Advisor conference, or the only QuickBooks Pro Advisor only conference. That's May 22nd and May 25th. And then in October, I believe the 23rd to the 25th of this year will be QuickBooks Connect in San Jose, California, which is Intuit's official QuickBooks event. We've had 3 previous episodes with the same title of QuickBooks at year end. Part 1, we talked about Enterprise Advanced Reporting. This was over a year ago. Management reports in QuickBooks Online and dealing with reconciliation discrepancies. So make sure you look up in YouTube or QBPowerHour.com for part 1 of QuickBooks at year end. Then on part 2, we talked about troubleshooting balance issues with accounts receivable and accounts payable in a cash basis balance sheet. And we'll talk about writing off invoices in QuickBooks Online. Michelle actually spoke about that in part two. And then on part three, I kind of explained the difference between merging and using sub accounts from for the perspective of cleaning up your chart of accounts. Then we cover the audit log in QuickBooks Online, closing date password, undeposited funds report, and then I compared batch enter transactions versus using bank feeds and importing apps on that part three of QuickBooks at year end. So, QuickBooks Statement Writer, we are going to have a guest speaker that's going to actually do a demonstration of QuickBooks Statement Writer with me. We're going to do it together. She's going to kind of going to guide me through it. I'm not really an expert in QuickBooks Statement Writer, but I do know what it does. Pretty in depth. I understand exactly what it does, but I don't know how to use it. So our guest speaker is actually going to walk me through using it, so that should be a lot of fun. Quick pointers. It's only available in QuickBooks Desktop Accountant or QuickBooks Enterprise. It's not available in Pro, not in Premiere, not in Mac, not in QuickBooks Online. Again, not in QuickBooks Online, not in Pro, not Premiere, not Mac, only QuickBooks Accountant and QuickBooks Enterprise. So what does it do? It takes QuickBooks data and it builds standard financial reports from that data, and it can be customized. It does have a lot of customizability, plus because it's in Excel, there's a lot of stuff you can do in Excel. Hopefully Jaime will show me some interesting Excel tricks. I always want to learn some new Excel tricks, but it's not considered a custom reporting tool. So it's not here to replace what the big custom reporting tools like QCube or QuickBooks Enterprise Advanced Reporting. This is a financial statement building tool. Now, this link down there, this is how you download Michelle Long's QuickBooks Statement Writer Guide that she wrote for Intuit back in 2012. I know it's a couple years old, but I think it's the last known full guide of QuickBooks Statement Writer, and it still holds up. So I recommend you download that one in that link between QSW and FY12. That's an underscore, by the way. Okay, so let me bring in Jaime, who's a CPA and a fractional CFO or part-time CFO. She likes to be called fractional CFO. I believe she's in South Carolina. Let me go ahead and bring Jaime in so she can introduce herself, and we can jump right into QuickBooks Statement Writer.
Sure. Well, I'm a fractional CFO, as you say, and I have a great team backing me up. So we work with small businesses typically in the $1 to $10 million range. They're really growing. They have complex problems, great business, great need for great business intelligence, and some strategy consulting around that. But they're not really in a position to hire a full-time CFO yet. And so that's really where the fractional CFO movement is starting to really take off throughout the country. And that's what we do. We do everything virtually. Some clients, I don't even know what they look like. If we packed each other on the street, I wouldn't know it. We do everything everything virtually, and as such, it's I want to get everything out of technology that I can, so my team and I can work efficiently and give really quality information to our clients, so then they can use it either to show it to third parties or to make decisions on it. And that information, it not only has to be accurate, but look good.
Okay. And how did you come up with, I mean, how did in QuickBooks Statement Writer come up in your career, in your life? How did this happen?
So it's a good question. How did this happen? So I was with a CPA firm in New Jersey for about 10 years, and I was doing a lot of your basic, um, your standard stuff, your tax, audits, reviews, compilations, weird notices from the IRS and whatever. And in that work with especially with the audits and reviews and compilations, we were using the a software, sometimes Excel or sometimes we have this other software that was disconnected from the QuickBooks file. So we'd load all the information in there. We'd have to put our adjustments in two places because you always make adjustments when you're doing one of these attestation engagements. Um, and then that gave you triple work because you have to do it in the QuickBooks file, in the separate file, and then you have to check it over. So immediately that jumped out at me because that's very inefficient, which kind of hurts my geek spirit. So I said there has to be a faster way. And around 2006 or so, with a financial statement designer came out, which is a precursor to today's QuickBooks Statement Writer.
Okay.
I jumped on it. I said, wow, something that we could present that looks like the standard financial statements that our firm presents with our formatting and our font and our no decimal places and our particular way of calling accounts, for example, cash and cash equivalents instead of total checking slash savings,
Okay.
on a, right? So all of that became possible and I jumped on it. And, in the early versions, there were some bugs to be worked out, but it has evolved very nicely over the years, which is why I'm a huge fan of it.
So I have a QuickBooks Desktop open here. And again, it has to be QuickBooks Accountant or Enterprise
Hmm.
for this to work. So we get started by going into Reports, and then we click on QuickBooks Statement Writer. Now, while this
Right.
loads, a little bit of a background, you have to make sure that your QuickBooks and your Excel and all that stuff is compatible. And I'll walk you through installing and going through all those kinks. And then the next step is to build a report. In this case, if we're building a report from scratch, we click right here where it says design new. And what that would do is it will open the QuickBooks Statement Writer, I think you call it the wizard, which is just basically
Yeah.
step-by-step process on how to
Hmm.
do that. So we'll start by giving this report a name. So we'll call it 2015 financial statements, and then the name of the company, I guess. Right? We can do that. Something like this.
Yes, you certainly can.
Okay.
Yeah. Now this is for, what you give this report name doesn't show up necessarily on anything that you print out. This is kind of how do you distinguish one from another because you
Right.
could have different report packages that you're
Correct.
preparing for a
So
client.
it's just like the file
There's
name. This is like the file name.
yeah, exactly. It's
Okay.
like the file name.
All right,
Yeah.
so then I choose the range that I want to do. So I'm going to pick here
Hmm.
this fiscal year, and I'll pick last fiscal year. And then I'll
Yep.
select which reports I want to see in my group, because this is going to be one big Excel
Yes.
file with a bunch of
File.
them. So I'll select selected year with variance, I guess, with prior year, and I'll select that one. And then I'll select for the income statement, selected period with percentage, which I assume that's percentage of income. And then we'll go down here and do a statement of cash flows. So we'll do selected period. And I guess we can also do a cover letter. And we can talk about cover letters a little bit later if we have time. And then we'll do a compilation report for accrual financial statements with disclosures. And again, these are templates that, and I can promote this and put them in the top if I want to organize these. These are templates that I can,
Put the disclosures on the bottom.
all right, disclosures
All
on the
right. No,
bottom.
no,
Yeah,
no. That's the report. Never mind. That's not the actual disclosures. Never
right,
mind. You're
right.
good.
That's the letter for the disclosures, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and
Hmm. Yeah.
hit next, and then the system will take me through kind of step by step. Hey, what do you want to see? What do you not want to see? At this point, I really don't have to mess with it because all the standard stuff from these reports are gonna be pre-populated. So I really shouldn't have to touch anything on this wizard anymore. Unless I want to sort of customize the data, but you suggest that we customize this inside Excel, correct?
Well, there are some things, I'm glad you asked, Hector. There are some things that are easier when you customize them in the report designer here in the wizard, and some things that are a lot easier when you customize in Excel. So, for example, I think combining accounts in any way that's customized to you is a lot easier when you do it here in the wizard.
Okay, that's
So
interesting.
let's step through that as an example. And if stay on the balance sheet. That's a great example because
Okay,
there are some accounts here that just have to be combined on a financial statement that just can't be combined in the chart of accounts.
okay,
Because if anyone on this webinar is thinking, why do you need to do that at all? You can just make the chart of accounts to have sub-accounts so you can roll them up. That's true, but it's not true universally. For example, in this sample file, we have City Business Weston, which is probably a checking account, and undeposited funds. If there's a balance in an undeposited funds account, it has to be included on the financial statements as part of what we call cash and cash equivalents.
okay.
That's that's what we call instead of total checking slash savings, which is what um, QuickBooks calls it. It's cash and cash equivalents. So what you want to do is combine those two into a single one. And here's the quickest way how to do that. So highlight row 5 where you've got that City Business Weston.
Okay, so I just click on the 5, right?
Yeah, and actually, we need to get into the rows wizard. Click on next in the bottom right.
Yep, so we'll hit next. Now we're on the
Okay,
rows.
so exactly. So highlight row 5,
Yep,
And now highlight row, hold down your control key and highlight undeposited funds.
So I hold down my control key and click, so both of these are selected.
Exactly. And on the top center, there's a button that says combine accounts.
Right
And it
there.
will always combine into the higher account
Perfect. Okay,
on the page,
so I'll click on
unless
combine
you do
account.
something different.
Now again,
Exactly.
I am not messing with this in the chart of accounts. This is just
Right.
on the financial report. Uh, uh, this is just for the financial report template. That's not going to change my chart of accounts in any way, shape, or form. Okay, that's pretty cool.
Exactly. And yeah, it is. It's one of the cool advantages of using the QuickBooks Statement Writer because you can leave the chart of accounts as it is, but still get the financial statements that you need. So here, that's the other thing. You can rename the account
So
by
we'll call it.
right-clicking, choose rename, call
So
it cash and cash equivalents,
yeah, that makes sense.
which is what CPAs need to put it in the financial statement. Some
Yeah,
people just call it cash, but still, that's something that's not available unless you export to Excel and then it's not connected.
correct,
That's really where there's a huge win for the statement writer.
correct. So should we go into Excel now?
Um, no, well, not quite yet.
Yeah. Okay.
If you scroll down a little bit,
Sure.
some other examples of accounts that you might need to combine include um, if there's an allowance for doubtful accounts underneath accounts receivable, if let's say the outside CPA has done that,
Yep.
then you can use that and you can merge it into accounts receivable if that's something you want to do. Then you can change the account name. You can rename it to say accounts receivable, comma, net of, that's the language that CPAs use, net of, um, you can say comma net, or you can say of net of the amount.
That makes sense.
Um,
Okay. Yeah, that
in
makes
the, you
sense.
know,
Yep.
so um, yeah, you can scroll down and we can look and see if there are any other typical balance sheet accounts that we might merge.
Maybe
If you
the
wanted to
two.
merge owner's health insurance with owner's equity slash draw,
Perfect. That's a good example.
again, you can merge those together. Now, here's something that you might find interesting. So you're about to do the right thing. You highlighted both accounts and you want to click combine accounts. As I mentioned earlier, though, it always combines to the one on top. And sometimes you don't want to do that. You want to combine to the one on bottom, as we do in this case, because we don't want to. It would be an extra step to combine to the one on top and then rename it.
Sure.
So only highlight owner's equity slash draw right now, and I'll show our audience another way that you can combine.
Got it.
So on the left, whereas on the left in the bottom, there's this list of accounts. Scroll down. You went too far. You're in the P&L section. Go to the equity section. It's a little bit higher up.
Okay. There it is.
We should be around there. And there's owner's health insurance in that box on the left.
Okay.
Not the owner's equity draw, but the owner's health insurance on the left.
Sure, I
You're
see
going
it.
to drag and drop. Yeah, drag and drop that over to the financial statement on the right where it says owner's equity slash draw.
Like this.
A little bit lower, and now release.
Under it.
Wait, go right on top of it.
Okay, let's see if it did it. Okay, so it went. So now it went. So I clicked and dragged it, and it basically moved it. I'm not sure if this is. I think this thing is about to crash, but
You have to go right.
but
You have to go right on top of it when you release it.
okay, right on top of it. Because which one do you want to see on top? Owner's equity
I
and
want to
draw?
see. I want to merge owner's health insurance into owner's equity
That makes sense. So right on top of
draw.
it.
So
Okay,
you
I see.
drag and drop right on top of it and release,
Right, and let me
and
scroll
it
down.
combines them.
Perfect.
Exactly. And when you mouse over it, you can see which accounts are included in it. So that's a really nice workaround for when you want to combine multiple accounts into one that's not necessarily on top in the financial statement. That's a really nice way to do it. Just drag and drop.
Uh, okay, so yeah, so we're not modifying the chart of accounts. This is just a
Exactly.
statement writer. Okay, perfect.
hmm So let's go over to the P&L, which you can do by clicking on top there. Same thing. So if if there's no reason to show multiple income accounts
Exactly.
on your financial statements, you can merge all of them. You can merge some of them. There's this one called uncategorized income. You can merge that for financial statement purposes while keeping the chart of accounts the same.
Yeah, that's all. That's actually really neat. I like that. Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Um, Similarly, you might have accounts, and this is part of what I really find compelling. For management purposes, internal decision making, a client might have their chart of accounts grouped in a certain way. For example, everything under subheadings of sales and marketing and general and administrative, so they can right size it with some percentages and then compare it against other businesses in their life cycle stage and see if they're spending their money in accordance with best practices. But they're going to need some more detail, and they're going to need it grouped a bit differently for financial statement presentation. So that's another advantage of showing all these individual accounts, which you can group any way that you want. So if you want to group bank service charges with office expenses, you can do that. If you want to group business gifts in with marketing, you can do that while keeping business gifts separate, which the tax preparers are going to want to see. So
Okay.
that's a good example of why you want, different financial statement account groupings for different presentations, and just another great bonus of the statement writer. I don't think we have to demo that again. I think
We got it.
we can move on. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's move on to headers and formatting.
Okay.
And I want to show our audience, as you've just demonstrated, you can click next in the bottom right and move through the wizard,
Right.
but you can also click the tabs across the top,
Okay.
numbered 1 through 5,
Perfect.
to quickly go to any section that you want. So here you actually have your choice as to whether you want to do your headers and formatting in the statement writer or in Excel. Really, it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. You have your choice as to where you want to do that. In general, I say do as much as you can in the statement writer, and then do in Excel what can really only be done in Excel.
Okay.
So here's where you can make it your official company font. If you want the report basis in there, you can have it in there, the page number. If you want to customize the footer, so right now the footer says See Accountant's Compilation Report.
Okay.
That's fine, but what if this is a SARS-21 engagement and it needs to say no assurance is provided on these financial statements? You can type that in.
Okay, so if it wasn't a compilation, then we can do that. Okay, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can make
I
that
mean, you
font
can do
bigger.
that in Excel also, but do as do as much here as possible. It has some efficiencies.
Use at your own risk. Okay.
There you go. Okay, good. And the main customization that I want to show you in the statement of cash flows, you want to do in Excel. And I can't wait to show you what's possible here in the statement writer, which was not really possible when the financial statement designer first came out. So you can click next.
Okay.
You can click create report.
Perfect.
And this is going to launch in Excel. Everyone's going to see that it's a familiar Excel interface with benefits.
Right. So
So there's going
QuickBooks
to be
QuickBooks Statement Writer is just an intermediary between QuickBooks and Excel, where you tell it how and what type of data in what order, and then it just posts everything into a spreadsheet. So then you can do even afterwards, you can do whatever you want on the spreadsheet. Correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. So give it a second for this all to load.
Okay. There's a couple
So
of
it
questions
looks
here
like,
while this
go
load, if
ahead.
you don't mind. Somebody's saying, is there a limit amount of characters we can put in the footer? And I know her question has to do with the amount of characters that are limited on the regular memo box on the QuickBooks report. So in this case, the answer would be no, because it will be limited to the physical space and the font size, because this is ultimately an Excel document, not a QuickBooks document. So that would be the answer to that. Would you
Yeah,
agree with
I
that?
agree. It is ultimately an Excel document, and I haven't tested out the number of characters available in the footer for the QuickBooks statement writer versus Excel, but I haven't ever run out of space.
Okay, and then
And
somebody else is saying
yeah,
that they're working on a remote server and they're having issues getting their statement writer to work. And this has to do with
yeah,
installing the right version of Microsoft Office and Excel that will work with it. So there really isn't any workarounds if you can't, unless an IT person gets involved and installs the right version. if it's 32 bits, 64-bit, 2013, whatever, you have to be very careful about the version for this to work. So it's very touchy. It has to work in a very specific version of Excel and a specific version of QuickBooks to make this work.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, I have QuickBooks 2016 and I'm working on Excel 2013. So as you can tell, it works like this. There's a
Mm-hmm.
thousand questions about does it work with, and people are giving me different combinations. I don't know. So I would say try 16 and Excel 2013. That works for sure. Um, okay, so go ahead, Jamie. I was just trying to answer some of the questions.
Yeah, no problem. And in fact, I would like to, I'm going to copy and paste into the chat window. If any, oh, I don't know do I have the ability to do that?
You should be able
Let's
to.
see.
Yep.
Okay, well, I just did it twice.
Okay.
There's an article that just in case it's not working with your Office 2013, because it was originally meant for Office 2007 and 2010, there's some steps that you can go through.
Okay.
You can do this, or
Perfect.
if there's an IT person, you can have them do that. This is a real, kind of back office techie thing.
Okay, I appreciate that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, back into QuickBooks. I mean, we're back
Yep.
into Excel. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, good. So here, I want to show you, if you can go to the income statement, Hector, I'd appreciate it. I want to show everyone, um, before we launch into some step-by-step details, just get a sense for the interface for a second. So first of all, you see these comments, these little red triangles.
Okay.
If you can mouse over any one of those red triangles, it tells you the accounts in this row. Similarly to how we saw it in the statement writer when we were still inside the statement writer in QuickBooks. So
Okay.
you have all those listed in a comment. The other thing I want to show everyone is the right-hand panel. So like I said, there are some things you can do in either QuickBooks Statement Writer, or once you're in Excel, you can do it here. It's whatever's the most convenient. In general, I'm a fan of doing as much as possible in the Statement Writer before coming here. And now that we're here, I want to show you some really awesome things, and part of the reason why I love this so much. So first of all, rounding. Rounding, there is a tool in the statement writer where you can show the numbers on a rounded basis. However, sometimes you can get into rounding issues, and numbers that you want to show as equal, but QuickBooks has decided to put the rounding error in an account that you don't want the rounding error in. For example, if it ends up in putting the rounding difference into retained earnings, that can be an issue if you're presenting a statement of retained earnings, because this year's retained earnings minus last year's is not going to be net income. It could be off by $1. Now, obviously, this makes no impact whatsoever on decision making, but if somebody notices it, you're going to look bad. And that's not cool. So I'm going to show you a really great technique for doing rounding once you're in the Excel environment. I have used this technique for as many years as I've been doing this type of work.
Okay.
So you're going to see live Hector learn how to do it step by step. Let's use, we're not going to need the percent column, Hector. Let's jump into the balance sheet. I always put the rounding, let's say, into a balance sheet account. And let's say for this purpose, we're just going to do it on 2015.
Okay, so we'll ignore these two.
Yeah, we'll just ignore C and D. We don't need them for the time being. If you can hide those, that would be great.
Perfect.
And let's use column E. So let's go step by step. In the cash and cash equivalents row in column E, would you please type the round function? So you're going to type equals round, and we're going to round to the nearest dollar. Why? Because when you present audited, reviewed, or compiled financial statements, you never show pennies. Everything's always to the nearest dollar. So click on the cell with the cash figure.
Okay.
Type a comma on your keyboard and type 0 because we want 0 decimal places.
Okay.
Right parentheses, hit enter.
So round up to the next dollar, basically, next whole dollar.
Well, it doesn't necessarily round up. It uses the standard rules of rounding. So if it's 5 or up, it goes to the next dollar. And if it's 4 or down, it goes down.
Okay.
Okay. Now take that cell, copy it, paste it onto the accounts receivable row. And if anyone is thinking of skipping that because it's 0, no, absolutely not. Don't forget, the whole reason why you're doing this in the first place is because you want your financial statements to be able to be updated automatically if someone changes the QuickBooks file. So it's 0 now, but it may not be 0 later.
Correct.
So go ahead and copy and paste it. paste it again onto the 3 property and equipment accounts
So
and
everything
skip
but the totals, right? Everything
everything but the totals.
okay.
Yep. Go down to the Amex account and the VW loan, just paste and paste. Just a few more accounts down below.
So everything that's not bold, basically.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. So now, next step, scroll back up to the top, please,
Yep.
Hector.
Yep.
And you're going to get one of my favorite keyboard shortcuts to quickly copy and paste your sum formulas from your total current assets, for example.
Okay.
So position the cursor in E9 directly to the right of other current assets.
Perfect.
And the keyboard shortcut here is called Control R. It means copyright. So
Control R.
Control R, copy to the right, and it copies the formula from the left to the right.
Okay, so I think I know what
And
happened. Let's undo this for a second. Unhide. It's because I'm copying it from here, right? So let me just get rid of this.
okay, can you delete C and D altogether?
Yeah, I'm gonna delete those. That was about to be a disaster. Let me just
All right,
insert
just
it.
insert. That's okay. Yeah, exactly, and then just scoot it over. That's fine. Thank you. I forgot about those.
Yep, it was gonna come back to hunt me. When you hide slide, when you hide columns, it always happens. So Control R, right?
All right. Yeah,
Control
Control
R.
R for copy to the right. Good.
Perfect.
Jump down to the other total cells and just hit Control R
Now
and quickly copy over the totals.
in this case, it is interesting. This one rounded. So
It rounded because now that sum formula is copying
oh, of
rounded, it's,
course.
it's summing up rounded numbers.
That is awesome. Okay, so Control R, and then
Yeah,
all the bold ones now. Control R
yeah,
is
just
cool.
Control R.
I didn't even know about. I thought I was an Excel guru, but I didn't even know about Control R. This is awesome. So
Yeah,
Control.
the other equivalent, the similar one is Control D, copy down. I use it all the time. It's so much faster than copy paste, Control C, Control V.
Okay, so I did all the
Okay, good.
controllers. Yep.
Okay, and now this highlights something really important here. You see on the bottom it says 127, 133 for the
This
total liabilities and stockholders' equity,
that one.
whereas the total assets are 127, 132. If you just did rounding, you'd be presenting an out of balance sheet,
Yep. You get fired.
right? Like a fail for the mojo. So now we're going to do the final step here, which is to create a rounding account to hide that extra dollar, and it's not always going to be a dollar. It's a dollar now, but the numbers could change, so the rounding error could change.
Okay.
You're going to create a formula to hold that rounding difference, that plug, and add it to an account that you know is never going to be zero. So you want to, and I never choose retained earnings or cash, so you want to, I usually go for accounts payable if it's there, but if not, you want to go for, what do you want to do, Hector?
Um.
Owners,
Yeah, I say we'll do it. Right on top of owner's equity. You say?
that's fine.
Okay.
So insert a row above it and insert a row below it,
Okay. Right above it.
and I'll show everybody Jamie's secret rounding technique.
Now, Jamie,
It's to save the mojo.
just in case people are sort of lost in terms of why we're finagling with so much of this in Excel, I just want to give
Yeah.
you some context. You're setting this up once,
Mm-hmm.
you're saving it, and then if
Yes.
there's something that you're gonna do next quarter or next month, all
Yeah.
this stuff retains, right? Gotta make sure
It's
because some
done.
people freak out about, okay, I have to do this each time. People are writing
No,
notes
no,
like
no.
crazy. It's like, yeah, you are gonna have to learn the techniques, but you don't have to do them each time. So next time I just change the date range, and everything
Yeah.
changes automatically. So I want to make sure people are not
Exactly.
we're not losing people because of that. So what's the next step?
No, no, no. So call this rounding. Just type the word rounding.
Okay, so rounding error or just rounding?
No, just round. You can call it whatever you want. I call it rounding.
Okay, I'll call it rounding error. I want to be a
All right.
contrarian.
All right. Now use Format Painter. Paint the format of owner's equity / draw on rounding error. So you click owner's equity. You click Format Painter, which is up there in the Home tab.
Yep.
You click rounding error. Good. And now below owner's equity draw, you're going to use my other favorite keyboard shortcut, Control D for copy down.
Control D, Control D. Oh, so it
Yes.
copies everything under it. Okay, that's pretty awesome.
Exactly. Yeah. It only works for R and D, by the way. Copy right, copy down. It doesn't do for left or up. But
There isn't like a Control H where it just puts Hector's contact information.
you'll have to program a macro for that.
Okay.
So, all right. So let me give you the formula for the rounding error now. So go into cell C45. So
Okay.
go one column to the right.
Okay, so I'm gonna go to C45.
Yep. So this is your formula. So type equals.
Yep.
And see, you can't do any of this inside QuickBooks.
No.
So then click on total assets.
So that would be the 127, 132 up here.
Exactly. Minus total liabilities.
Yeah. You're taking me to school now, Jamie.
Now, minus, and now type the word sum.
Okay. So I'll do it up here in the formula bar.
That's
Sum.
fine. Left parentheses. Click on the cell directly below it containing the owner's equity number that's actually coming from QuickBooks,
Right.
comma, and then highlight both retained earnings and net income.
Okay. So everything under that line that was skipped, because
Yeah,
if
exactly.
I select that empty one, I'll have a circular reference issue, I assume.
Yes, yes, you will. You're going to have a circular reference if you choose the empty one. You'll have a circular reference if you choose total stockholders' equity, and you'll have a circular reference if you choose total liabilities and stockholders' equity.
Okay.
This is a formula that you need. So hit enter, and then we're going to do two final steps to wrap this up before we get the oohs and the ahs.
Okay. I think so. I took assets minus liabilities
Hmm.
minus stockholders' equity, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Is that press enter? Oh, $1. There it is.
Look at that. We have a $1 error.
Uh-huh.
Now, as a next step, two cells below in the blank cell, you're going to use nothing but a sum function.
Okay.
Add up rounding error and owner's equity slash draw.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So we're picking, just out of context, we're picking owner's equity because we're trying to pick an account that people don't pay too much attention to in terms of changing that $1, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's
Okay.
I mean, that's why typically I go with payables. You, you know, you're not going to don't choose an account that's going to end up being potentially zero, and don't, because then a dollar is going to show up and that's going to look weird. Don't present an account that gets a lot of scrutiny, like retained earnings this year minus last year. It has to equal net income, and if it's off by a dollar, ixnay to the mojo. So the next step here is to highlight rounding error and owner's equity draw and hide those. You're
Okay.
going to hide
Well,
those rows.
I assume we have to change that
Yeah,
formula to not include that duplicate number, correct? So I
yeah,
have to,
exactly.
so
So you don't want the duplicates.
I gotta exclude that one like that. Okay. So yeah, because
Hmm.
I'm
And
taking
make
the
sure
net,
that the
taking the net. Okay.
it- yes, exactly. And make sure that the total at the bottom is not referencing that duplicate either, which I don't think it is.
No, it's not.
No
It's
good.
perfect. Okay.
Okay. So now hide rows 45 and 46,
Perfect.
and now finally hide column B.
Hide column B's. Okay. So
Hide
before
column
I
B, and as the final step, you want to get rid of those two decimal places in column C.
right.
All of this is a one-time setup for helping you present, well, and actually before, do format painter of column B onto column C, or paste formats, either way.
So I can paste the formats.
Not the formulas, the format.
Looking for it. Looking for it. Where are you? Formatting. There it is.
Oh,
Okay.
good.
Perfect. So
Okay, so now you can,
and then hide B. Correct.
now, yeah, hide that. And now in column C, you can get rid of those two decimal places.
Okay. So I'm gonna click format cells and then under number, no decimal places. Where
Yeah, and put your thousand separator.
okay, yeah, that's good too, right? So we'll do 1,000 separator, and then
Yeah,
we'll do currency. I guess that will work.
that's
Perfect.
fine.
Yep.
All right, so now you have now you have a technique that you can use to show rounded financial statements. You can use in the formatting expected for audit reviews and compilations. You can have it in your client's official company font. You can have it in a size that really works for them. You can put their official company logo in the header and say, here you go. Part of, in my opinion, part of great accounting is getting accurate numbers and being counted on for that. And part of it is presenting information in such a way that it lands and can be used and is not going to get stuffed in a drawer. And sometimes that takes a little panache. And if that's adding your client's logo and using your client's official company font, it becomes a very nice emotional experience. And frankly, I view it as a differentiator. It doesn't cost you anything but a couple of seconds, but it's one of those things that has someone feel, my accountant really gets me. My bookkeeper really knows me. I really feel I experience customized and personalized service. And it's those little things that can make a big difference. By the way, your year is formatted as a dollar, so you're going to want to fix that. But
Yeah. That's the total dollar amount in my bank account.
Okay, so look, Jamie, I
Anyway,
think
yeah,
we had a bunch of stuff in the agenda, but
yeah,
I
go
mean,
ahead.
I don't know if we can do any more because I have to go over my part as well.
Of course.
So a couple of things. The majority of the comments we're getting from people is, hey, this is more of an Excel thing than a QuickBooks thing. And I guess that's kind of the beauty of it. I guess, Statement Writer is not necessarily a QuickBooks feature. It's a separate program that extracts the data, puts it in Excel, and then gives you the power of Excel to do whatever you want. So what you're really taking advantage of is Excel, not QuickBooks. But we're not
Exactly.
retyping the data; we're just getting it from there. Um,
The huge advantage is the linkage, the fact that it's in Excel and you have the freedom to use the Excel tools, but you have the data linked back to QuickBooks. But you don't have to use a third-party tool like some of the ones that are out there that are very good. But this is a wizard, and it comes in the accountant version of QuickBooks, and it's a lot, the learning curve is very short, and the data is linked to QuickBooks, and that's the main advantage.
exactly. And then Jamie, if people wanted to reach you, what's the
Yeah.
best way for them to reach you? And what are the type of things that you do answer via email, or the type of things that you require an appointment for?
Yeah, great question. So email is definitely the best way to reach me. I love answering questions from fellow practitioners all around the country and sometimes outside the country. So feel free to reach out. The types of questions that I love answering over email from time to time are not the type of things that you would call a quick question, but the type of thing that really has a quick answer. The the type of question that I don't need to see your screen for. If there's something that I need to see your screen for, it might make more sense for us to create an appointment. And I'd be more than happy to talk about doing that.
And
Sometimes we get
you,
really
you do work
complex.
with other accountants and other bookkeepers
Oh, yeah.
in learning, let's say, for example, specific things in Excel pertaining to financial statements and a
Hmm.
statement writer. Okay,
Yes,
perfect.
exactly.
Thank you. But Jamie, this has been awesome. We spoke on the phone before, and I said, look, we'll go kind of raw in this. This is not my area of expertise, but I think I did a pretty good job following you, and you did a great job teaching it as well. So hope that we can
Thank
have
you, and
you
nice job.
at some point in the future, and then maybe talk about more statement writer stuff, and maybe
I'd love
other
to.
Excel tricks. Thank you very much, Jamie. So,
Thank you,
guys,
Hector.
here's the contact info. Thank you, Jamie. All right, so let's switch gears a little bit. That was educational, to say the least. Let me go back into my presentation here so I don't lose track of what we're doing here. Okay, so next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna switch over to QuickBooks Online trial balance tool. So we're gonna talk about the QuickBooks Online trial balance tool, the difference between the trial balance report and the trial balance tool, which is a significant difference and an area of a lot of confusion. What is the trial balance tool? It's a place for you to see your beginning balances, your total debits and credits for the current year being reviewed, the current balance. It's also a place where you can mark as reviewed or checked or revised every single balance before we send it to the tax person or before we prepare the tax return. It's a place where we can upload attachments, documents, work papers regarding that review of that trial balance and also add notes. We can also quickly create or review adjusting journal entries, and we can map accounts to send it to into a tax online, or if your tax software allows the import of CSV files with trial balances, you don't have to basically retype all that information in your tax software. So that's in a nutshell what the trial balance tool is. So let me log into sample QuickBooks Online file that I have. And while that loads, let's see if I have, if there's, like Jamie said, it's not the quick question, it's the quick answer. That's interesting. I never really approached it that way. Everybody says they have a quick question, but all the questions have a 30-minute answer. Let me see. Somebody says, can we have a copy of the PowerPoint? The answer is yes. I'm going to put it on the email. I'm going to put it on the email that everybody gets. I'm sure that you're used to that email by now. I'm going to send it on that email. Somebody says, does Canadian QuickBooks Online have the trial balance tool? I think the answer is no, but I don't know. Does this tool export to Pro Series? I don't use Pro Series, but I haven't seen a Pro Series button in it. So I would say if Pro Series can import a trial balance that's on CSV, then the answer is yes. If it cannot, then the answer is no. Let me see what else. What other questions with quick answers are here. Let's see. What time is the CPE keyword coming up? Yep, that's going to come up towards the end. So we got a couple of minutes until we put that. And then it says access to slides will be helpful. Yep, sometimes we make the slides public, sometimes we don't. Sometimes it's because of uh, uh, honestly, it's laziness. Sometimes we just don't have a lot of somebody says, can you recommend a supplemental guide for QuickBooks Statement Writer? So in the slides, there's a 2012 guide that Michelle Long wrote. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Okay, those, I think all the other questions have really long answers. Okay, so I'm in QuickBooks Online. Hopefully everybody can see my QuickBooks Online here. And I went into a client file, and down here on the right, you see where it says trial balance start review. So right there on the right, it says trial balance start review. So let's assume for a minute that my financial statements for 2015 are completed in terms of all the work that we do in QuickBooks Online, and now we are just ready to export this into software or make a final review before we send it to the tax preparer. So we're going to click here where it says start review over there in the right. So I'm going to click on that, and then that's going to open the trial balance tool. Now, the terminology is important. This is called the trial balance tool. I mean, I call it trial balance tool. Intuit calls it trial balance, which makes it really confusing. But this is not the same thing as the trial balance report. So let me go to reports first and just kind of make sure that there's no confusion around what this is. So we are not talking about here on the accountant reports, we're not talking about this trial balance report. This is just simply a trial balance report. It is what it is. It's a report. Okay, that's not what we're focused on here. We're focused on the trial balance tool. Let me do here last fiscal year so we know what information we're looking at. We're going to go through the trial balance tool so we can review every balance in the trial balance report. So that's the trial balance report. I'm going to go ahead and just duplicate the tab. That way I have that trial balance report handy there just in case I want to review it. Let me go back into QuickBooks Online Accountant here, and let me just go back and log into QuickBooks Online Accountant so I can go back into that quick trial balance tool. So let me go pull up my sample file and then go to start review or resume review or continue review at this point. So the anatomy of the trial balance tool, let me go through it. And I know we only got about 10 minutes left, but if we run long a little bit, I don't mind running long. I prefer to just give you the complete piece of information. So on the top left, you see the word trial balance. You see the tax year you're working on, and you work on these per year basis. So you review each year separate, and each year is like its own little template. Now here on the pencil button, this is where I can switch the type of tax form that we're using, just in case it was set up incorrectly on the settings. And I'll put here 1120S. That way, when I do my mapping, it maps it to every single line in that type of tax return. And then the accounting method cannot be changed. This is straight from your settings. I'm going to click on save, and I'll hit continue. And then this is choosing the tax form is related to the tax mapping, which is in this tab over here, which is where I actually tell it what every one of these accounts are. So for the most part, it knows that income accounts go to services and the expense accounts go into each line on the tax return. As you can see here, that's line 16, line 1, and so forth, right? So this is where I tell it what each account is. The ones that are unmapped, they're in red like this. And this is important for transferring into a tax online or pulling up the tax line mapping report similar to how it is in QuickBooks Desktop. So I click on assign tax line, and then I pick where in my tax return this line is referred to. So these are all my equity accounts. So these are going to be somewhere on Schedule K, and if you don't prepare, Schedule L. So if you don't prepare tax returns, this stuff is like, okay, I don't really care about this stuff. But and then just to kind of simplify it, I'm going to go down and just look for one of the equity accounts down there. Right here, I'm going to put an additional paid in capital, and then I'm going to map this one into retained earnings. Okay, you can do retained earnings, so I'll do it into additional paid in capital. Okay, perfect. And then I'm done with my mapping. That means that, oh, there's one more here. Of course, I'll do the same thing with that one. And again, only important if you care about pulling a tax mapped report. So let's see what that means. So up here on the right where it says export tax mappings, it gives me an option. I can go to view tax return, which literally means transfer the data into Intuit Tax Online. That's what it means. And then export to Excel. So that will make a lot of sense because we'll be able to see an Excel file. So basically what the Excel file does is it gives me my trial balance, and you'll be able to see it here once I export it fully. And this is downloading. This is my trial balance, and it gives you each dollar amount next to each line that it belongs to the tax return. So if you have staff that prepares tax and you want to just kind of pre-chew the stuff for them, you can tell them exactly where each line of the financial statement goes in the tax return. Or you can also go up here where it says export to CSV, and then the CSV file is really just meant for you to import it. So depending on the type of tax software you have, you may be able to import this like this, or you may have to separate negatives and positives out of that, and that would be an Excel thing, which I just don't have time to cover. But this CSV file is really meant for importing into a different tax software. But this is just a tax portion. Let's assume for a minute that we're not really worried about the tax component of the tool. We're just using it as a method for us to review our client's financial statement at the end of the year. So what we can do is, for example, here on the Bank of America, we see that our 2015 balance is, in this case, 3682, and here's our ending balance. So these are all the unadjusted balances, the activity, and then we'll have, if I scroll to the right, my adjusted balances. So everything between my unadjusted balances and my activities and my adjusted balances are transactions that we create during this review process in order to make the adjustment. So let's just kind of go through that. So let's say, for example, that this cash on hand, 18,197, that's what's in QuickBooks now, but we want to adjust that against, let's assume for a minute, adjust it against sales. Okay, I'm not saying this is correct or incorrect. I'm just going to say we're going to adjust it against sales. So we're going to take, we know that it's a debit balance at the end of the year. So it's a positive balance on cash on hand. So right here where it says adjusting entries, I'm going to put my cursor right next to that percentage and click on that plus sign. And basically that's going to open a journal entry tool, which I can also click up here and do a journal entry. I can do both options. I don't have to do it through the tool, but just, for fun, we'll click on that plus sign there. And that's going to open a journal entry, but it's going to pre-check this little box here that says adjusting journal entry. And the way QuickBooks knows that that this is going to be an adjusted balance, not necessarily the original balance, is simply through that checkbox. So if I put that checkbox, it will show up in that column. If I don't put the checkbox, it will show up as the unadjusted balance. So that's an extremely important piece of the process. So I'm going to put here cash on hand, and I forgot what the dollar amount is. Of course, it always happens to me. I forget the dollar amounts. So 18,197. Let me copy that. Go back into that, and we'll go to cash on hand, and we will reduce that by that amount. And we're going to go ahead and, again, don't judge me on the accounting accuracy of this. I'm just going to lower it against income because that's what we want to do. And then I can add a description here in terms of, client said none of the cash deposited here is income, whatever, right? So we'll put whatever the notes are. Okay, I'm gonna copy that note for a minute. That's the note that's part of the journal entry that will show up in the reports and so forth. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit save and close. And then once I hit save and close, I should be able to see an adjustment in my trial balance from my original unadjusted balance. Now I'm going to see a column that says adjusting entries, and as I scroll down, I'll see the debit part on the income side too, and then we can see what our adjusted balances are. So it's a pretty good way to kind of explain how the numbers change as you adjust them. All right, so back into the trial balance tool here. And so we were looking at the adjustment that we made, and we see how this is presented as the credit and the debit. That's pretty clear there. Now, something that's pretty interesting about the review process is if somebody goes out there and makes a change to the books, while I am reviewing, something really interesting happens. And I'm going to show you this real quick. Let's say while I'm doing the review, because the books haven't been closed or whatever, somebody puts a bill and puts a date during the review process, puts a bill here for 400, dated last year, and then they hit save and close. Essentially, what's happening is now my financial statements are being affected by something that happened during the review process. And here on this ribbon at the top, you see, you see a timeline. It says, look, we started the review process at this time. Then Hector went in there and did a journal entry. Then Hector then went in there and created a bill. So what ends up happening is you're going to see down here under a column called all other transactions. This is where it keeps track of any changes that were made during the review period. So this is what this ribbon is for here in the top, is to kind of review each transaction that is being changed during the review period. Now, if you want to kind of ignore that and say, no, that bill was supposed to be there, we can click here where it says update on adjusted balances. And it basically means we'll start over again with new information, including those $400 adjustments. So I can click on that, hit update, and then basically I reset the whole process and start all over again. So the lesson learned here is the only thing that you really want to do during the trial balance review process is create adjusting journal entries. That's it. Beyond that, you shouldn't be deleting stuff or cleaning stuff. That should happen before we jump into the trial balance tool. Now, at the end of the day, we're going to have our adjusted balance, which is our ending balance for every account in there. And we can actually click here where it says work papers. We can click here on the little plus where the document is, and we can put a note. And we can put there, client said, non-cash deposits, whatever. So we can actually add notes into every one of these accounts. So basically, as we work on them, as we make adjustments, as we're making changes based on basically new information that our client is giving us, or new information that we're discovering, we can add notes in there. Now, the other thing we can do is if we have an Excel spreadsheet, an email from a client, a financial document that we want to add as part of the working papers, then we can click right there on that little paper click, and we'll click there on the plus sign, and then the attach window shows up, and then I can just click on browse, and I can just pick any document here from my computer, and I upload and attach that document. And this document is not attached into the regular document attachment center for QuickBooks Online. This is attached simply just to the trial balance tool as a work paper for that particular transaction. The other kind of interesting things you see here on the left side, let me go ahead and close this attachments tool, is as I review every account, I can mark it as complete, mark it as complete, mark it as complete. And basically I would assume that you're ready to give this financial statement to the client or to the tax preparer. Once we reviewed every single account, we did the adjustments and we added notes regarding our adjustments. So at the end of the day, that's it. You really don't have to do anything else. If you want to lock in your review so nobody else can mess with it, we click up here to the top where it says finish review, and basically nobody can go in there and make changes to it. So it's right now it's locked. Like I click on stuff, I can't do anything. I can't add journal entries. Yeah, I can click on any of the reports to see what was adjusted. I can still do that, but I can't make any more changes to the trial balance. Now I can still go back and do something in QuickBooks because I'm not locking the books, I'm locking the trial balance tool. And I'm telling you, this concept is very, very new. This is Intuit's being very pioneerish in delivering this, because this as is being presented and what it's trying to solve for has really never been used before, not even in the desktop software, although it has a little bit of that. But I kind of wanted to give you good understanding of what the trial balance review is. Okay, so in the slides that I'm going to send you, I have some text that I've written where I basically go through the why the trial balance works, the difference between making corrections and making adjustments. I just showed you how to do an adjustment, which is in a journal entry, that is marked adjustment, difference between correcting and adjustments. So you'll get a copy of these slides. This is part of a different webinar, a complete webinar on trial balance that I did for Intuit a couple of months ago. So all this stuff will be part of that email when it comes up. So upcoming webinars next week. Michelle will do a presentation. I won't be here next week. Michelle and I are kind of alternating during tax season so we can be optimal in our own practices. She will be doing frequently asked questions and advanced issues on converting to QuickBooks Online. Then the following week, we will have another episode. And then after the 25th, we'll get back to every other week. Thank you very much for attending. I hope you learned something interesting today. Join our Facebook group. Just search QB Power Hour in our Facebook group or click on the link and send any suggestions. Thank you very much for staying and have a wonderful day and tax season.